"You don't deserve anything James left behind. Sign the house over to me, unless you want to lose Lucas too." Those were the exact words my daughter-in-law said to me on the same day we buried my son. Her lipstick was still perfect, her hair flawless, her nails freshly done, as if she had stepped out of a photo shoot instead of a funeral. She smelled faintly of expensive perfume, sharp and floral, a scent that didn't belong anywhere near grief. And when she leaned her elbows on my kitchen counter, tapping the glossy surface of those freshly manicured nails, she said it again, slower this time, as if savoring each syllable. "Sign it or lose him. ATU." I stood completely still. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, stuck like a shard of glass. It wasn't the threat, it was the audacity, the cold certainty in her voice, the absolute absence of remorse. Outside, the wind clattered against the windows, rattling them in their frames. Inside, the house felt colder than the November air. Somewhere upstairs, my grandson was crying into a pillow he still hadn't washed because it smelled like his father. And here, right in front of me, Sophia, my son's widow, was trying to barter custody with property deeds. I didn't respond. Not right away. Not yet. Because only an hour earlier, at Thomas Bennett's law office, I had learned something she didn't know, and that she absolutely couldn't know. James had changed everything 3 months before he died. Every asset, every instruction, every contingency was planned with a clarity that chilled me to the bone. And then Thomas placed a sealed envelope in my hands, the weight of it heavier than the entire world pressing down on my shoulders. "Read it when you're alone," he'd whispered. James wanted that. Is just fond baya. So I swallowed the panic that threatened to spill out of my chest, looked Sophia straight in the eye, and forced myself to smile a small, trembling, motherly smile. "I'll think about it," I said. It was the same smile I used to give my students when they tried to manipulate me with deadlines and excuses. Calm, soft, utterly unreadable. But inside, I was counting every second. After she left, the kitchen fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant lull of traffic. I stood there gripping the edge of the counter, the same counter where James used to sit as a teenager, swinging his legs while telling me about a new book he'd found or some class debate he'd won. The same counter where Lucas had sat last Christmas, helping me frost sugar cookies while Sophia scrolled through her phone, bored out of her mind. The same counter where my son once said, "Mom, if anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll protect Lucas." End quote. God, I never imagined this was what he meant. I walked slowly to the living room, passing the framed photos on the wall. James in his graduation gown, James holding newborn Lucas, James teaching Lucas how to hold a fishing rod, both of them grinning into the camera. Every picture felt like a knife to the ribs. I sat down on the couch and stared at the sealed envelope resting in my lap. My hands shook as I traced my son's handwriting steady, clear, familiar. I hadn't seen his handwriting in weeks. I hadn't heard his voice. And suddenly, the weight of his absence crushed me all over again. I opened the envelope, and the moment my eyes landed on the first sentence, I felt the world tilt. "Mom, if you're reading this, the unthinkable has happened." Was not of Hennet. Everything blurred for a moment. The room, the walls, the photos, all of it spun as my heart pounded in my chest. I had to close my eyes to steady myself. When I opened them again, the words waited for me like a verdict. The kind that changes lives, the kind that splits a story into before and after. James wrote about fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of Sophia. Fear of what she might do if she ever gained full control of Lucas. Fear of the mask she wore so effortlessly that even he, the man she married, had taken too long to recognize who she really was beneath it. He wrote about late-night discoveries, emotions he tried to rationalize, patterns he had attempted to ignore until he couldn't anymore. He wrote about Lucas, his sweet, sensitive 8-year-old boy who loved dinosaurs, thunderstorms, and blueberry pancakes. "Mom," he wrote, "I'm scared she will turn him into something he's not. Someone who exists only to benefit her." My hand flew to my mouth as a sob escaped me. My son had died scared not for himself, but for his child. He died without knowing whether Lucas would be safe, and James had instructed me, in the calm certainty of that letter, not to confront Sophia, not to let her see even a flicker of suspicion. "She's performing," he wrote, "always performing. And the moment she sees you as a threat, she'll leverage Lucas. She'll twist things. She'll make you look unstable. Don't give her that window. I'd come." So I folded the letter carefully, gently, like it was something sacred, because it was. I pressed it to my chest and cried until I could barely breathe. Then I wiped my face, inhaled, and stood up. I had a role to play now. The grieving, confused, cooperative mother-in-law. The one Sophia believed she could manipulate. The one she underestimated. Upstairs, Lucas let out a soft, muffled cry. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy but certain. When I pushed his door open, he lay curled on his side, clutching a framed photo of James. His small shoulders shook under the covers. "Grandma?" he whispered without lifting his head. "Where's Mom?" She said she'd tuck me in. "We have a demly." I sat beside him and brushed his hair gently. "She had something she needed to do," I whispered back. "But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. It's been Seder." His breathing slowed as he pressed closer to me, seeking warmth, safety, something familiar, something steady. Something he'd been losing slowly without even realizing it. And as I held him, I knew I had already made my decision. Whatever war Sophia was planning to start, whatever leverage she thought she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I wasn't just a grandmother trying to hold a broken child together. I was James's mother. The only person left who understood exactly what he feared and exactly what he needed me to do. This was only the beginning. The morning of the funeral felt like waking up inside a dream I could not escape from. The sky was heavy with low gray clouds, thick enough to swallow the sun, and a cold drizzle had been falling since dawn. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, the windshield wipers thudding back and forth like a metronome, marking the seconds between one breath and the next. I kept telling myself to stay composed, to get through the service without collapsing on the floor. But grief is not something you can reason with. It hits in waves, and that morning each wave knocked the breath out of me. I walked into the chapel first, because I needed a moment alone with my son. His coffin, simple and dark, sat at the front, under soft, warm lights. The room smelled faintly of lilies, the kind he used to buy me every Mother's Day. My knees almost buckled when I touched the polished wood. I whispered a few words, something between a prayer and a promise, though my voice trembled so badly I barely recognized it. When I finally stepped back and turned around, the first people I saw entering the chapel were Sophia and a man I had never seen before. Sophia was dressed in black from head to toe, elegant and pristine, as if she were attending a gala, not burying her husband. Her hair was perfectly curled, her makeup flawless, not a trace of smudged mascara or restless grief. She didn't even look tired. She walked with confidence, almost a dramatic glide, pausing just long enough at the doorway to ensure people noticed her. And standing half a step behind her, too close to be casual, too distant to be family, was a tall man in a gray suit, his hand brushing the small of her back before he quickly withdrew it. I didn't know his name then. I didn't need to. The way Sophia leaned toward him, the way he whispered something that made her lips twitch upward, it was enough to send a cold streak of something sharp through my chest. People grieve differently, yes, but the absence of grief is unmistakable. I stood frozen as they approached, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. Lucas walked beside Sophia, holding her hand. But even from across the room, I could see how his shoulders drooped and how tightly he clung to the worn baseball cap James had bought him last spring. Sophia gave me a soft, practiced smile, the kind a person uses when they know others are watching. "Mom," she said, her voice smooth and steady. "You okay? Well, 2-9? Okay." That was the word she used. Not devastated, not heartbroken, just okay. I forced a nod, swallowing the pain clawing at my throat. "I'm managing," I whispered. "You should sit with Lucas, have you wise." She didn't. She sat in the front row without Lucas, exactly where everyone could see her. Lucas sat beside me instead, burying his face into my arm the moment the service began. The pastor spoke about legacy, about kindness, about James being a man who lived with quiet integrity. And he was right. Every word of it. But every time I glanced at Sophia, she was unmoved, staring straight ahead with a steady jaw and dry eyes. No trembling lip, no moment of lost composure. Nothing. Not even when James's childhood best friend choked up reading a letter he had written but never sent. The only time Sophia touched her face was to check her makeup with her phone screen reflected in a compact mirror, and every few minutes she looked back over her shoulder at the man in the gray suit. When the service ended, people came to offer condolences. Some hugged me, others held my hands, their faces soft with sympathy. But every time someone approached Sophia, she performed grief like a trained actress. She'd sniff lightly, widen her eyes, tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, tilt her chin as if struggling to stay composed. To someone who didn't know her, the show might have seemed convincing, but I had watched her for years. I knew what genuine emotion looked like on her. This wasn't it. Then something happened that sealed my suspicion. A close family friend, Linda, approached Sophia gently and said, "You must be overwhelmed, sweetheart. We're all here for you. It's not of his orders." Sophia pressed her lips together, lowered her gaze and murmured, "Thank you. It's just been so hard." "It's not no." But the moment Linda turned her back, Sophia's expression snapped back to neutral, cold, calculating, bored. She pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, and smirked faintly. Then she looked straight at the man in the gray suit and gave him a subtle nod. He left the room immediately. I remember gripping my purse tighter. A knot formed in my stomach, one part dread, one part clarity. James had sensed something. He had written about it, and now, standing in that chapel, with the scent of lilies and the echoes of hymns still hanging in the air, I felt it too. Something wasn't right. Something had been wrong for a long time. When the attendees began filing out, Thomas approached me. He didn't hug me. He simply touched my arm and spoke in a low voice. "Eleanor," he murmured, "don't react to anything today. Just observe." His eyes followed Sophia as she reached for Lucas's hand, only to immediately drop it to answer a call. "We need to talk soon," he added. "James left more instructions than you know." "I know." His tone sent a chill down my spine. "What kind of instructions?" I asked. Thomas shook his head. "Not here. It's not Revit." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark, like the world was holding its breath. People gathered in small circles, sharing stories about James. Laughter mingled with grief. Lucas stayed close to me, refusing to leave my side. Sophia stood under a covered walkway with the man in the gray suit, her voice low, her posture too intimate for a widow fresh from a funeral. At one point she laughed softly, quickly, but undeniably. And when she noticed me watching, she straightened immediately and pretended to wipe a non-existent tear. That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty. My son had been right to be afraid. He had seen something in her before the rest of us did, and he had tried desperately to protect Lucas. As we drove home, Lucas stared out the window in silence, clutching his father's cap. I reached for his hand, and he squeezed mine gently. "Grandma?" he whispered. "Mom didn't even sit with me today." 2040. I forced my voice to steady. "I noticed, sweetheart." Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Did I do something wrong?" "In dine today's," and my heart shattered all over again. "No," I said softly. "You did nothing wrong, nothing at all. It's but deep inside, something else was breaking open, an understanding, a clarity, a resolve. Sophia wasn't grieving. Sophia was repositioning. And I was going to find out exactly what she thought she could get away with. 2 days after the funeral, I found myself sitting in Thomas's office again, a place I had always associated with mundane legal tasks, home refinancing, updating insurance papers, helping James sort out a contract once. Never with something like this. The blinds were half closed, letting in slivers of muted morning light, and the air smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. I sat on the leather chair, legs trembling beneath me, trying to steady my breathing. I kept running my thumb over the smooth wedding band I still wore after all these years, a nervous habit I hadn't quite shaken. Sophia arrived 15 minutes late. She swept into the room like she owned it, heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor, coat draped over her arm, sunglasses perched on her head despite the dim light. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge the tension. She simply let out a sigh, as though we were wasting her time. and then she sat down directly across from Thomas, crossed her legs with a practiced flourish, and rested her manicured fingers on the table. "Let's make this quick," she said. "Lucas has a playdate later." "I can't." Thomas didn't even look at her. He opened a folder slowly, methodically, as if preparing to perform a delicate surgery. "I'll begin with the standard provisions," he said. "Then we'll review the updated instructions your husband left." "Well, Bind." Sophia smiled, one of those small, confident, condescending smiles she reserved for moments she believed she had already won. "Of course," she murmured. "James wanted me to handle things. He trusted me completely." Quote, what happened next wiped that smile off her face. Thomas read the first section, financial accounts set aside for Lucas's education. Sophia nodded approvingly. Then the second section, James's personal belongings, with instructions for sentimental items to be chosen by Lucas when he was older. Again, Sophia nodded, though her eyes flickered impatiently. But when Thomas reached the third section, something shifted. His tone became firmer, slower. He read each sentence carefully, making sure we heard every word. And as he spoke, I watched Sophia's expression morph from confidence to confusion to disbelief. James had transferred the house she believed she would inherit without question, to me. Not temporarily, not conditionally, fully, completely, irrevocably. Sophia blinked rapidly. Her mouth opened, then closed. She leaned forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cracking around the edges. "That must be a mistake. James would never." Thomas lifted a hand. "This was updated 3 months ago. IASIS." Her voice rose. 3 months ago, he was perfectly healthy, expective in measure. Thomas nodded. "Yes." And he was very clear in his instructions. There was a silence so heavy it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Sophia's fingers curled tightly around the arm of her chair. "No," she whispered. "No, that isn't right. That isn't how this works. I was his wife. Versade." "You still are," Thomas said calmly. "Nothing here disputes that." I quote. "Then why would he give her the house?" She jabbed a finger in my direction. "It doesn't make sense." Remore use. It made perfect sense. And deep down, Sophia knew it. Thomas continued reading. But Sophia barely listened. She stared at the table, eyes darting wildly as though searching for a loophole, a misprint, an error in reality. She only snapped back when Thomas announced the allocation of assets. The vehicles, the savings accounts, the insurance policies, each one carefully structured so that Lucas, not Sophia, benefited. By the time Thomas closed the folder, Sophia looked like someone had yanked the ground out from under her. "You must have manipulated him," she spat at me suddenly. "You must have pressured him. He adored me. He wouldn't do this." 2-1. I kept my voice steady. "I didn't know he changed anything." "Ardu. You're lying." "Is C and crime." Thomas stepped in. "Mrs. Carter, if you continue raising your voice, we'll have to pause this meeting." 2-1. She slumped back, shaking her head, whispering angrily to herself. I watched her, realizing that for the first time since James died, she wasn't performing. This was real. Her panic wasn't an act. Her mask was breaking, and what showed underneath was darker than I expected. Then Thomas pulled out a smaller envelope. My breath hitched. The words, "For my mom," were written in my son's handwriting. Sophia lunged for it instinctively, something like desperation flashing across her face, but Thomas held it firmly and slid it toward me instead. "This," he said softly, "is personal, not part of the legal reading." Quote. Sophia stared at the envelope with a hunger that unsettled me. Her voice dropped to a low hiss. "What is that?" "On Pentade." "A private letter," Thomas replied. "Not your concern." 24. "It is my concern. Everything involving James is my concern." 2. Thomas shook his head. "Not this." End quote. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "This is insane. He would never shut me out like this." Then she turned sharply to me. "You're not taking my home. You hear me? I'll fight this. I'll fight you." "I do nine," but her voice cracked. And then I saw it: fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. She grabbed her purse, stormed toward the door, and flung it open so violently that the blinds rattled. "This isn't over," she said before leaving, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the door closed, the room fell silent again. Thomas let out a long breath and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I didn't want to do that yet," he murmured. "But she forced our hand." "Is real live." "I assumed she'd be upset," I whispered. "But that was more than upset. I have Amada. She's volatile," Thomas said simply. That's why James acted when he did. He wasn't just afraid she'd mishandle the finances. He was afraid she'd weaponize Lucas. Tens. I swallowed hard. The envelope felt warm in my hands, as though James himself had pressed it into my palms moments ago. "When do I open this?" I asked. Thomas's expression softened. "When you're ready." "But Eleanor, once you read it, things will change. You'll understand everything." Cries. Outside, I could still hear the faint echo of Sophia's footsteps fading down the hall. Inside, the air felt heavier, thicker, charged with the sense that something enormous had just shifted, something irreversible. And as I tucked the envelope into my purse and walked out of the office, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The real battle hadn't even started yet, and Sophia was already losing control. I didn't open the letter immediately. I carried it home, pressed tightly against my chest, as though somehow the warmth of my hands could protect whatever fragile truth lived inside it. The drive back was a blur of wet pavement, smudged clouds, and the rhythmic clicking of the turn signal as I sat at intersections I barely remembered approaching. My mind replayed Sophia's face in that office, how quickly she had unraveled the moment she realized she wasn't getting everything she believed she was entitled to. She had looked cornered, dangerous, and James had seen it long before any of us did. When I walked into the house, it felt unnaturally quiet, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lucas was upstairs reading. The TV was off, and even the refrigerator hummed differently, lower, slower, as if the whole place sensed that something important was about to happen. I sat down in the living room, the same spot where I used to rock James when he was 4 and afraid of thunderstorms. My fingers shook as I slid a nail under the flap of the envelope, the paper giving way with a soft tearing sound that echoed far too loudly. Inside was a single sheet, no legal jargon, no instructions about property, no mention of responsibilities. Just handwriting I knew as well as my own, steady and familiar, stretching down the page. I blinked several times before the words came into focus. "Mom, if you're reading this, the unthinkable has happened. 24. A chill rippled up my arms. My throat tightened, and a wave of grief washed over me so suddenly I had to press a hand to my chest to steady myself. I forced myself to read on. James wrote that he had been watching Sophia closely for months, that something had shifted in her the way she spoke to him. The sudden bursts of anger over small things, the late-night absences she excused with flimsy stories. He wrote that he had checked the bank accounts and found transfers he couldn't explain, that he had overheard one side of phone calls she refused to discuss, that she had become distant, cold, calculated. He wrote that he wasn't sure when love had turned into something transactional, something conditional, something that frightened him. As I read, every sentence felt like a stone dropping into my stomach. Then came a paragraph that made my breath stop. "I'm scared for Lucas. Not because she'll hurt him physically. She's smarter than that. But she uses people, Mom. She molds them into what she needs. She tells Lucas who to be, what to feel, how to act. And he tries so hard to please her, even when it breaks him." Einan. My hand flew to my mouth as a small cry escaped me. I pictured Lucas clutching his baseball cap at the funeral, avoiding Sophia's touch, shrinking each time her voice sharpened. I thought of the subtle ways she corrected him, the impatient sighs she tried to dress as gentle suggestions, the glare she gave him when she thought no one was looking. James continued. "I tried to confront her once. She laughed. She told me I was imagining things. She said I was paranoid, insecure, jealous of her success. She twisted every concern until I felt like the problem. I started documenting things because I couldn't trust my own mind anymore. Is not wait." That line broke me. I curled forward, letting the tears fall freely, my shoulders shaking as grief and anger tangled inside me. My son had died with that weight. He had carried fear in silence, because the world never believes a man when he says he's being emotionally abused. They call it stress, They call it marital tension. They call it anything except what it is. And then, the final section. If anything ever happens to me, anything sudden, anything unexpected, please protect Lucas. Don't provoke her. Don't confront her. She performs for others. She knows how to manipulate perception. If she sees you as a threat, she will weaponize custody. She will make you look unstable. Instead, be patient. Gather evidence and wait. She will slip. She always does. And my hands trembled as I lowered the letter onto my lap. For a long time, I sat in silence, the room spinning slowly around me. I thought of all the small moments over the years, times Sophia had spoken too sharply, smiled too sweetly, excused too easily. Times I had dismissed my discomfort as judgment, or generational differences, or the natural tension between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. I hadn't seen the truth. I hadn't wanted to see it. But James had. I wiped my face and read the last line again. She will slip. She always does. Doom. As if summoned by the words, footsteps sounded outside, the crunch of gravel, the hurried patter of boots climbing the porch steps. I barely had time to fold the letter back into its envelope before the front door swung open. Sophia strode in without knocking, her eyes wild, her hair disheveled from the wind. She slammed her purse onto the entry table. "I need to talk to you," she snapped. I froze, heart pounding. "Sophia, what?" "Don't play dumb," she cut in. "You think you've won? You think taking that house will give you any real power?" She moved closer, lowering her voice to a venomous hiss. "I'm his wife. I'll fight you until your last breath if I have to." I-5. I searched her face for even a hint of grief, even a flicker of pain. But all I saw was rage, pure, unfiltered rage. "Sophia," I said carefully, "this isn't the time." She stepped closer, her breath sharp and fast. "I'm not letting you ruin my life. I will get what's mine, and Lucas will stay with me, with or without your support." I no doubt have phoned. My heart dropped. She said it so easily, so casually, as if Lucas were collateral, not a child. "Where is Lucas?" I asked, fear slicing through my voice. "In the car," she said briskly, "sleeping. I needed to make this clear before he woke up." Chatter. Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and walked out as abruptly as she'd entered. The door slammed behind her, and her car engine roared to life. I stood there trembling, gripping the letter so tightly it crumpled in my hand. James had been right about everything. Sophia was unraveling. And now, I knew exactly how dangerous she could be. But I also knew something else, something she didn't. I wasn't alone. I had James's words. I had Thomas. I had the truth. And I had a grandson who needed me more than ever. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw James's handwriting, the lines where he warned me to wait, to watch, to document everything. And then I saw Sophia standing in my doorway, eyes blazing with the kind of anger that burns through logic and replaces it with pure entitlement. By dawn, I had made a decision not out of fear, but out of strategy. If I wanted to protect Lucas, I had to stop reacting emotionally and start playing the long game, the game James had already mapped out for me. When the sun rose, the house felt colder than usual. Lucas padded downstairs in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Is Mom mad again?" he asked quietly. Children always know. They absorb tension the way fabric absorbs smoke. It lingers long after the fire is gone. I knelt beside him and brushed his hair away from his forehead. "No, sweetheart. She's just going through a hard time." He nodded, accepting that answer with the kind of fragile trust that made my heart ache. After dropping him at school, I drove straight to Thomas Bennett's office. He took one look at my face and closed the door behind me. "What happened?" he asked. I placed the letter on his desk, smoothing the creases with trembling hands. As he read, his expression shifted from concentration to disbelief, to a kind of solemn conviction. When he finally looked up, his voice was low. "Eleanor, this changes everything." "I have." He explained that James's detailed notes, his fears about Sophia's manipulation, and his explicit instructions created a legal foundation stronger than anything we had previously discussed. "But we can't move too quickly," Thomas cautioned. "If she senses we're preparing action, she'll retaliate, and Lucas will be caught in the crossfire." I exhaled shakily. She already threatened me. She said she'd fight me until my last breath. Thomas didn't look surprised. That's exactly why we must stay calm. To ask. Then just as we were about to plan our next steps, Thomas's assistant knocked and handed him a file she said had arrived by courier. No name, no return address. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Sophia and a tall man in an expensive suit, laughing, drinking, entering a hotel together in Miami, meeting in restaurants back home, exchanging envelopes in parking garages. My skin prickled. Who sent these? I whispered. Thomas rubbed his jaw. Someone who wants the truth to come out, or someone who wants to use you to get to her. I was no. More pages, screenshots of text messages she had sent to this man, complaints about James, plans to leave the marriage once she secured the finances, references to Lucas as the complication. One message stopped my breath entirely. Just a few more months, then everything will fall into place. I wheat. Thomas leaned back, stunned. James must have suspected the affair. Maybe he even hired someone to follow her. I shook my head, tears filling my eyes. He didn't want to believe she would hurt him, but he documented it anyway. It was overwhelming, my son, already facing his own death, still trying to protect his child and his mother from a woman he was married to. And then, just when I thought my heart couldn't take more, Thomas's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. It's Sophia's attorney. I have the save-in, he answered, voice neutral. This is Bennett. It's wise. A pause. Then he held the phone out to me. She wants to speak with you directly. I have other worry you. My stomach clenched. I took the phone. Yes, Sophia? We have a ground. Her voice was smooth, sugary, sweet, an imitation of vulnerability. Eleanor, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I froze, recognizing the shift. She wasn't angry. She was performing. I didn't mean to say those things, she continued. I was emotional. We're both grieving. And I think maybe we should talk like family instead of fighting. I wondered. Thomas raised an eyebrow at me. I forced my voice to stay calm. I agree. Talking is good. I have doted. Perfect, she said. Come to dinner tonight. Just us. No lawyers. Oh, into now. I felt a warning ripple through my chest. Where? Avis. My place. 7. It's a Veldet. Is Lucas joining us? 80. No, she said too quickly. He'll be with a friend. End quote. Something in her tone told me the entire thing was a trap. After she hung up, I turned to Thomas. I can't go alone. I know. He nodded. You're not. I'll sit in the car. Keep your phone on. Record everything. One-party consent laws protect you. Is for 9. As I drove to Sophia's neighborhood that evening, I rehearsed every sentence in my head. Stay neutral. Stay soft. Stay predictable. She thinks you're fragile, let her believe that. Her house was glowing warmly from the outside, expensive lamps, curated lighting, the illusion of a woman living a perfect suburban life. But when she opened the door, I could see the cracks in the mask. Her eyes were bloodshot, her smile too wide, her voice shaky, like she had practiced it in the mirror. Come in, she said, stepping aside. The table was set for 2 candles, polished silverware, soft jazz music playing in the background. It looked romantic, disturbingly romantic. I sat down carefully as she poured wine into both glasses. She didn't drink hers, a detail I catalogued instantly. For several minutes, she talked about nothing: weather, memorial flowers, paperwork, Lucas's school forms. But then her voice shifted, dropping into a low, careful tone. Eleanor, I know you think poorly of me. I know you always have. I shook my head gently. That's not true. Who's? To Andaya, she smirked. Please, we're past pretending. To it, She leaned closer, her perfume sharp, cloying. I need the house, she said. James would have wanted me to stay there. It's minus. I exhaled slowly. James changed his will intentionally. He must have had a reason. Her jaw clenched. He did it because you made him. You've always tried to turn him against me. You're jealous I had what you never did. Is loyalty. Is braid. The words sliced, but I stayed silent. Because in her anger, she always revealed something important. And Lucas? I asked quietly. Her eyes flashed cold. He belongs with me. He's my son. Is no Speary. That was when I saw it, a thin line of panic under all that rage. She wasn't asking. She was warning. Eleanor, she whispered, voice trembling. I can't lose everything. Not after all I've invested. Not after all these years. 24. Invested. Not loved. Not raised. Not cared for. Invested. Before I could respond, she leaned back, exhaled shakily, and put on that soft, trembling expression she used when she wanted sympathy. I just need you to trust me, she said, and sign the transfer forms, the house, the cars, the account access, everything. End quote. My heart slammed in my chest. She had prepared forms. She was ready. She was desperate. And she was slipping, just like James said. As I stared at the papers, she slid toward me. I felt something inside me harden, not anger, not fear, but a fierce clarity. She wasn't just threatening me. She was threatening Lucas's stability, his safety. And that was when I decided I would not sign. Not tonight. Not ever. But I needed her to believe I might. I needed more evidence. I needed her to keep talking, to keep revealing who she really was. So I looked up, slow and hesitant, and said the words that changed everything. Let me think about it. As it down. Her smile spread like wildfire, and in that moment, she believed she was winning. The moment I walked out of Sophia's house that night, I felt the cool air hit my skin like a warning. My legs shook, not from fear, but from the sharp awareness that she had crossed into dangerous territory, using Lucas, using grief, using economic pressure to get exactly what she wanted. Thomas's car was parked half a block down, engine off, interior dark. When I slid into the passenger seat, he didn't ask a single question. He just waited, and slowly, I exhaled. She tried to make me sign everything, I whispered. All assets. House, cars, bank access. I think. And Lucas? Thomas asked softly. I swallowed. She said he belongs to her. I was nos. Thomas closed his eyes briefly. We're closer than I thought. Much closer. I heaven nined. On the drive back, I replayed every detail. The wine she didn't drink, the trembling hands, the pre-printed forms, the way her voice cracked not with grief, but with desperation. It wasn't love that was driving her. It wasn't even motherhood. It was fear. Fear of losing status, fear of losing comfort, fear of losing control, fear of a truth she'd successfully buried for years now, clawing its way to the surface. The next morning, everything felt heavier. Even Lucas seemed to sense the shift. He was unusually quiet at breakfast, poking at his toast rather than eating it. Grandma, he whispered finally, Mom said she wants to take me on a trip again. I froze. When did she say that? Last night, he said. Before bed. She said we might go somewhere sunny, somewhere far. I myself. My heart began pounding. Did she say where? Actual, he shrugged. She said, Arizona again. Arizona. The word hit me like an icy fist. After dropping Lucas at school, I drove directly to Thomas's office. He was already waiting with fresh coffee and a stack of files. Sit, he said, without his usual calm preamble. We have a situation. Abada Vinam. He turned his computer monitor toward me. On the screen was an airline itinerary, 2 one-way tickets to Phoenix booked under Sophia's name. Departure, tomorrow morning. Passenger 2, Lucas Reynolds. My stomach twisted. How did you get this? AD. Our investigator flagged it, Thomas said. Sophia didn't even use a burner account. She booked it through her own frequent flyer number. She isn't being cautious anymore. She's rushing. I felt my breath shallow. If she takes him to Arizona? Thomas finished for me. She can file for emergency jurisdiction in a different state. And once she has a foothold there, it becomes a long, ugly, legal maze. I have sided-hided. My hands shook so hard I had to clasp them together. Thomas, we have to stop her. Mar. We will. It's prized. How? I demanded. She has every legal right to take him out of state unless, he said quietly. We file for an emergency protective order today. My breath caught. Today? I believe for Zoller. Yes, and we have enough. Her attempt to coerce you out of assets, her threats, the affair, the travel plans, James's letter. And the psychological impact on Lucas. Argo, I closed my eyes. Do you think the judge will even listen? She'll claim it's a grieving mother trying to reconnect. Whenever Thomas leaned forward. She's not reconnecting. She's fleeing. After Ebony, the gravity of it sank in, and we're going to prove it. That afternoon, I stopped by Lucas's school early. His teacher waved me into the hallway with a sympathetic smile. Lucas seemed a little anxious today, she said quietly. He kept asking when you were coming. When he spotted me, he dropped his pencil and ran into my arms. His small body trembled against mine. Grandma, did Mom say anything to you? Is she mad? Am I in trouble? I hugged him tighter. No, sweetheart. You're safe, I promise. But as I said it, my eyes drifted toward the school's front entrance, and my blood ran cold. Sophia, standing there in dark sunglasses, clutching her phone, looking around the hallway too quickly. When her eyes landed on us, her posture tightened. She forced a smile too wide, too bright, and started walking toward us. Eleanor, she said, her voice breathy and false. I was just coming to get Lucas. For what? I asked, keeping my tone light. We're going home early. I thought he could use some extra time with me. Her knuckles whitened around her purse strap. Lucas clutched my sleeve. Grandma, I want to stay with you today, he whispered. Sophia's smile flickered. I said gently. We should stick to the routine today. She tilted her head, her expression hardening under the polite veneer. You don't get to make that decision. I am his mother. A teacher approached cautiously, sensing the tension. Is everything okay here? Sophia snapped. Everything is fine. Then caught herself and smoothed her tone. We're just discussing pickup arrangements. But her eyes never left mine. They burned with a cold, calculated warning. She stepped slightly closer, lowering her voice to a whisper only I could hear. You have until tonight to sign those papers. My heart stopped. Otherwise, she hissed, I'm taking him, with or without your consent. That was the moment something inside me shifted, not fear, not panic, something colder, something steadier, something that had been dormant since the day I held James's hand in the hospital and told him I would protect his son. I leaned in just enough for her to hear me. Try it. Sophia's eyes widened, and then, like the universe had been listening, the school doors opened again. It was the sheriff. He walked straight toward us, folder in hand. Ms. Sophia Jensen. Yes? She said, blinking rapidly. You've been served. He handed her the emergency protective order Thomas had filed an hour earlier. She stared at the papers as if they were written in fire. Her lips trembled with pure outrage. This is outrageous, she whispered. This is illegal. You can't keep my son from me, the sheriff spoke calmly. Ma'am, this order temporarily restricts you from removing the minor child from the state, pending a hearing. Lucas squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt. Sophia looked at me, eyes wild, voice trembling. You have no idea what you've started. But for the first time, she wasn't threatening me. She was afraid. That evening, after Lucas was asleep, I sat at the dining room table, staring at Sophia's abandoned airline reservation. Thomas called to confirm the judge scheduled a hearing within 48 hours. She'll fight, he warned. I know, Trues. She'll lie. You not of Ensenay. I know. I'm made of Peters, of lot of Io, I do knows and of Eva. She'll try to twist everything. Azo, I know. I muttered too. And you're ready? AI. I looked at Lucas's backpack hanging by the front door. At the science project we had rebuilt together. At the memory of James's letter sitting in my drawer upstairs. Yes, I said. I'm ready, but deep down, I also knew this was only the first battle. And Sophia, she wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sheriff handing Sophia that protective order in the school hallway. The way her face contorted shock, rage, disbelief, like someone who believed the world existed only to obey her. Now, finally, something hadn't. When dawn came, the house felt unnervingly still. Lucas slept peacefully upstairs, unaware that today would shape his future more than any day since his father died. As I buttoned my navy blazer, the same one I'd worn to James's funeral, I told myself one thing. I would not falter. Not today. Not in front of her. At the courthouse, Thomas met me at the steps, files tucked under his arm, expression calm but eyes sharp. "She'll come armed with theatrics," he warned gently. "Don't respond. Don't defend. Just tell the truth." I nodded, exhaling slowly. "And Lucas?" "He won't be called," Thomas reassured me. The judge reviewed the report. "She's already concerned." It helped, but only slightly. The idea of Lucas being dragged through the emotional battlefield his mother had created filled me with a cold fury I could barely contain. Inside the courtroom, Sophia was already seated with her attorney, well-dressed, composed, back straight, hands folded like a remorseful widow in a magazine spread. But her eyes were locked on me with a chilling, glassy intensity, a performance painted over panic. The man beside her sharp suit, slick hair, expensive cufflinks leaned toward her, whispering strategy. She nodded with the confidence of someone who believed money could bend outcomes, judges, and truth itself. When the bailiff announced, "All rise," a brief tremor went through her body. Then Judge Rosalie Carlton entered, silver hair, sharp glasses, presence made of steel. She took her seat, scanning us with a gaze that saw straight through fabric, excuses, and lies. "We're here to determine whether the emergency protective order remains in place," she announced. Her eyes flicked to Sophia. "Miss Jensen, you may begin." Our daughter." Sophia's attorney rose. Smooth voice, rehearsed sympathy. "Your Honor, my client is a grieving mother. Her husband passed suddenly. She has been under extraordinary stress. Any decisions she made were emotional, not malicious. She simply wanted to reconnect with her son, to take him to her parents in Arizona for support, hardly a crime." He gestured gracefully, as if he were painting the scene with invisible brushes. "This order is an overreach fueled by a mother-in-law's grief-driven resentment." 10. I could feel Thomas tense beside me. Then Sophia stood slowly, deliberately, hands trembling just enough to be noticeable, but not so much as to seem performed. "Your Honor," she whispered, voice cracking in perfect rhythm. "I am not perfect, but I love my son. I have never, ever put him in danger. I've done everything alone since James died. Everything." Her eyes glistened with tears that never quite fell. "I didn't flee. I didn't run. I just needed support. My parents begged to help, and now I'm being punished for being overwhelmed." Ended. The judge watched her with the same expression one might use while observing an experiment. Sophia continued, voice trembling in all the right places. "Lucas is my child. I carried him. I raised him. I stayed awake while he was sick. I love him more than anything, and I would never take him away from his family. Never. Don't lie." Thomas leaned toward me, whispering, "She keeps saying, 'love' the way a person repeats a word to convince themselves it's still true." Then it was our turn. Thomas stood with none of the theatrics, just quiet certainty. "Your Honor, this isn't about grief. This isn't about a mother seeking support. This is about intent." He opened the folder. "Here is a confirmed travel itinerary, one-way flights for Mrs. Jensen and the minor child, booked without informing any family, booked despite school attendance, booked within 24 hours of receiving notice of inheritance." End quote. Sophia stiffened visibly. Thomas continued, passing documents to the bailiff. "Here are text messages between Miss Jensen and an individual identified as R.H. He let that name hang in the air, discussing relocating, discussing removing the child permanently, discussing financial motivations." Sophia blanched. "And," Thomas said, voice calm, "here is a sworn statement from Lucas's school counselor noting elevated anxiety specifically connected to fear of being taken to Arizona. AP videos." Sophia's attorney stood abruptly. "Objection. Overruled," the judge said, without looking at him. Thomas placed the final paper on the podium. "And lastly, Your Honor, a letter from the deceased father, James Reynolds. I has so. Because of the mile divided, a pin could have fallen on velvet." Sophia's head whipped toward me, eyes wide with something beyond rage, fear. Thomas lifted the letter carefully. "This document expresses concerns about Miss Jensen's behavior, her emotional manipulation of their son, her financial motives, and her potential flight risk." 294. Sophia slammed her hand on the table. "That's private. That's not admissible." James was confused. He was stressed. He didn't mean, "Miss Jensen," the judge snapped. "Sit." I have a know them. Sophia froze, then sank slowly into her chair, jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might shatter a tooth. Thomas didn't raise his voice. This letter shows planning, Your Honor. Not the grandmother's, not mine, the father's. He knew something was wrong. 8. When he finished, the judge leaned back, fingers steepled, eyes drifting between us, calculating, weighing, measuring. Then she exhaled. Miss Jensen, she said, turning to Sophia. I am deeply concerned. Today our... Sophia blinked rapidly. Your Honor, please. The judge lifted a hand. You booked one-way flights. You concealed them. You involved no family. You failed to notify the school. You pursued relocation within days of your husband's death. That is not grief. That is planning. 25. Sophia's mouth opened, then closed again. And the court does not take lightly, the judge continued. Your attempt to pressure the child's grandmother into signing over assets in exchange for access to the child. Sophia's attorney stiffened. The judge adjusted her glasses. This order will remain in place. If we won. Sophia's breath hitched. The judge wasn't finished. In addition, Miss Jensen, you will be required to attend supervised visitation 3 times weekly, complete a psychological evaluation, and comply with all court-appointed monitoring. 24. Sophia shot to her feet. This is insane! He's my son! And in 40. Sit. It has Proter. The single word reverberated through the courtroom. She sat. For the first time. She looked small. Not powerful. Not superior. Not in control. Just cornered. When the gavel struck, Sophia's mask finally cracked. She turned to me, voice shaking with pure venom. You think this is over? She whispered. But you have no idea what I can do. Her attorney pulled her away, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. And for the first time, I realized James had been right all along. She wasn't just unstable. She wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. And she wasn't done with us yet. The first 48 hours after the hearing were strangely quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe but stalks. I knew Sophia well enough by then to understand one thing. She never stops after a loss. She regroups. She recalibrates. She retaliates. And when the calm stretched into a second day, I realized this wasn't peace. It was planning. Every sound in the house made me flinch, every car door outside, every vibration of my phone. I kept expecting another attack, another attempt to pull Lucas away. And then, it started. It began with the phone calls, blocked numbers, short, sharp silences, breaths on the other end that weren't quite audible but definitely human. I stopped answering after the 4th call, but they kept coming, one every hour, like a clock ticking down to something inevitable. Then the emails, anonymous messages accusing me of stealing a child, of manipulating a widow, of wanting attention. I knew they weren't from strangers. Sophia had always been skilled at recruiting allies, especially people who only knew the mask and never the woman behind it. I blocked the addresses, but more appeared. By the 3rd night, someone had left a stack of printed flyers at my door. Don't back her. She wants to take a child away from his mother. If friends, no signature, no contact information, just rage, printed in ink. I didn't show Lucas the flyers. I just tore them into shreds and threw them in the trash. But even then, standing in the dim kitchen with paper scraps under my nails, I felt something inside me harden again. She wanted to scare me. She wanted to rattle me. She wanted me to break. She didn't know who she was dealing with. 2 mornings later, the doorbell rang. Lucas was eating cereal, swinging his legs as he hummed under his breath, unaware of the tightness in my chest. I glanced through the peephole and saw a woman standing outside mid-40s, professional suit, clipboard, tucked under her arm. I opened the door cautiously. Mrs. Reynolds? Yes, well afforded. I'm Dr. Hannah Porter, the court-appointed custody evaluator. Inaccuracy. My stomach clenched, but I stepped aside. Come in, too. Lucas looked up, spoon in his mouth. Dr. Porter smiled warmly. Hi, Lucas. I'm just here to ask you some questions and make sure you're doing okay. End quote. Lucas froze. The spoon slipped from his fingers and clattered into the bowl. Dr. Porter and I moved to the living room while Lucas finished breakfast slowly, cautiously, like someone afraid to move incorrectly in front of a stranger. When he finally joined us, he curled into my side, though he tried to pretend he wasn't. "Doctor," Porter noticed. She began gently. "Lucas, how are things at home?" Tentro. Lucas shrugged. "Okay, I guess." "Who is 9? A simple answer. Too simple. A child showing his cards, without realizing it. "And your mom?" "Doctor," Porter asked. Lucas's shoulders tightened. "She's busy." "Also, what does that mean?" "I have to dumb." Lucas picked at a thread on the couch. "She gets mad a lot, and she gets tired, and she cries sometimes, but not like real crying." My breath caught. "Doctor," Porter leaned forward. "Not real crying?" "Left of Israel." Lucas shook his head. "It's loud crying, but her face doesn't change. It's like she's practicing to 2 R's. A silence stretched across the room like a sheet being pulled tight. "Lucas," Dr. Porter said gently, "has your mom ever said anything that made you scared?" I brammed to describe. Lucas looked at me, eyes wide. "Can I tell her?" he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "Anything you want to tell her, sweetheart. You're safe." 2. I was really 2. 2 I wills. I was really 4. Lucas swallowed, voice trembling. Mom said, "If Grandma keeps being difficult, we'll go somewhere where Grandma can't follow." End quote. It's not risen. My entire body went cold. "Doctor." Porter's pen stopped mid-note. "Did she say where?" Lucas shook his head. "No. Just far. She said Grandma is trying to steal me. But she's not. I don't want to leave. I miss Dad." 2. "Doctor." Porter looked at me, an unspoken message passing between us. This was more than concern. This was risk, a real one. After speaking with Lucas privately, Dr. Porter spent time inspecting the home, checking Lucas's room, reviewing his routines, observing how he interacted with me. She took notes on everything: our conversations, his behavior, even the way he clung to my side when she said she needed to speak with me alone. When she finally closed her folder, her voice was soft but firm. "Mrs. Reynolds? I'm concerned, very concerned." "I knows." My chest tightened. "Is he in danger?" Two-eyed. She shook her head slowly. "Not physically, but emotionally?" "Yes." His anxiety spikes when discussing his mother. His language suggests fear of unpredictability, and his attachment to you is stabilizing him. Removing him abruptly could be damaging. I exhaled shakily. "What happens now?" 2,000 Falmars. "I'll file my report within 24 hours. But what?" "It's so 9 is event." She hesitated. "Prepare yourself. Miss Jensen isn't going to take this well." Cleesum. As she left, Lucas slipped his hand into mine. "Grandma is 9. "Yes, sweetheart." End quote. Am I in trouble? I didn't have dization. "No," I whispered, kneeling until I was eye level with him. "You are brave, and you told the truth." I file. His little face crumpled, and he buried his head in my shoulder. "Mom gets mad when I tell the truth." I held him tighter. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. No words, just a video. Sophia, screaming, crying, blaming me for everything, promising she would do whatever it takes to get her son back. Her eyes wild, unfocused, her voice cracking in ways I had never heard before. Then the final sentence: "If the court won't fix this, I will." My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. A moment later, another text arrived. "Check your front porch." That stock and downs. My stomach dropped. I opened the door slowly, and sitting on the welcome mat was a small cardboard box with no label. Inside, Lucas's favorite dinosaur toy, broken clean in half. I felt something inside me snap, not fear, not panic, resolve. Because if she thought intimidation would make me step back, she had no idea what I was capable of when it came to protecting my grandson. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was war. The morning of Sophia's psychological evaluation felt strangely still, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Lucas was at school, and I sat at the dining table with a mug of untouched tea growing cold between my hands. I kept replaying her final message from the night before the broken toy, the half-threat hidden behind it, the video of her screaming into her phone like a woman losing the war inside her own mind. For the first time, I didn't wonder whether she was capable of harming someone emotionally. I wondered what she was capable of, period, and how far she would fall if pushed. By 10 o'clock, Thomas called. She showed up, he said. Barely. Enten ideas. Barely? Chris say. She was late, disheveled. Her attorney was trying to calm her down in the lobby. Quote, a shiver went through me. Did she threaten anyone? Great. Not directly. But her behavior is escalating. Even. It wasn't news. It was confirmation. He added quietly, I'll update you when the evaluator finishes. Is 5. I tried to move through the day, normally folding laundry, prepping dinner, sweeping crumbs from the counter, but everything felt distant, muted. Even the house seemed quieter, like it sensed a storm building just beyond the walls. At 1:17 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Thomas, she's done, he said. The evaluator wants to speak with you privately before the report is filed. I railroaded to. My hands tightened around the phone. That's either very good or very bad. End quote. Neither, he replied. It's urgent. End quote. I drove to the evaluator's office with a tension in my chest that made it hard to breathe. The building was calm, soft lighting, neutral colors, serene music playing faintly through hidden speakers. But when Dr. Marie Collins stepped into the waiting room, her face was grave. She extended a hand. Mrs. Reynolds, she said softly, thank you for coming. End quote. She led me into her office. Shelves of psychology textbooks lined the walls, and a diffuser emitted the faint smell of lavender. A calming space designed to soothe, but nothing about her expression suggested comfort. Please sit, she said. I did. She folded her hands on her lap. I need to speak with you about Miss Jensen's evaluation. End quote. My heart thudded. Is Lucas in danger? I complained. There was a long pause. Emotionally? Yes, potentially. End quote. The room tilted. Tell me, I whispered. Dr. Collins took a breath. Miss Jensen displayed signs of acute stress, disorganized thought patterns, and volatile emotional regulation. She alternated between intense crying and sudden anger. She contradicted herself frequently. She blamed everyone, including her late husband, for her current situation. I swallowed hard. And Lucas? Reclamant. Dr. Collins hesitated, choosing her words with clinical precision. She refers to him less as a child and more as a possession. Something she deserves, something owed to her. I felt cold creep through my spine, she said. Dr. Collins continued. If Eleanor weren't in the picture, everything would fall into place. If we, my jaw clenched. She said that to you? End quote. Yes. When every 24 min veils. Did she clarify what she meant? As in there. No, but her tone was concerning. Very concerning. I haven't to do. The room felt suddenly too small, too quiet. She also mentioned Arizona, repeatedly, Dr. Collins added. She insisted it was her right to relocate, even after I reminded her of the court order. I wouldn't devil. I closed my eyes. I could almost hear James's voice whispering from the letter. She will slip. She always does. When her contradictions became too obvious, Dr. Collins went on. She became defensive. Then she shut down. And then what? I tackle. She laughed. Is my parole? Laughed? I have PA. Yes. A sudden shift. It was unsettling. 80 night. A chill ran across my skin. The evaluator leaned in slightly. Mrs. Reynolds? I don't say this lightly. But based on her responses today, I will be recommending supervised visitation indefinitely, pending further evaluation. To Bill. Relief washed over me for a moment, but it didn't last, because the next words nearly knocked the breath out of my lungs. However, before she left, she said something else. 25. What? I whispered. Dr. Collins looked at me with an expression halfway between concern and apology. She said, I'm not losing him. I don't care what I have to do. I won. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? I asked, though part of me already knew. I don't know, Dr. Collins said quietly, but I am advising you to be vigilant. She is unstable, unpredictable, and emotionally volatile. She feels cornered, and cornered people can be dangerous. It's not noted. The air in the room thickened. Then Dr. Collins added something even worse. There's one more thing. She asked for a copy of the evaluation notes. We told her no. That seemed to upset her. It said heaven in follows. Something deep in my chest tightened an instinct. A warning. She said she'd find her own answers, Dr. Collins continued. And she left abruptly. I have bought abruptly, unpredictably. With no legal routes left, the ride home was a blur of stoplights and distorted reflections in the windshield. When I reached my neighborhood, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A car, Sophia's car, parked half a block from my house. Engine off, windows fogged, license plate unmistakable. I pulled into my driveway, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I texted Thomas. She's here. He replied instantly. Stay inside. Lock all doors. I'm calling the sheriff. Inside, Lucas sat on the couch drawing dinosaurs, oblivious to the danger creeping outside. Grandma? He asked, holding up his sketch. Does this look like a T-Rex? I forced a smile. It's perfect, sweetheart. I have time. But as I spoke, I peeked out the window. Sophia's silhouette leaned forward in the driver's seat, watching my house, watching us. I closed the curtains. Dr. Collins's words echoed. Cornered people can be dangerous. Is Minijo. And Sophia wasn't just cornered, she was unraveling. And I feared deeply that the next move she made wouldn't be another voicemail, or another broken toy, or another anonymous message. It would be something far worse. Something meant to end this once and for all. Sophia's car stayed parked down the street for nearly an hour, unmoving, headlights off, a still shadow against the curb. I checked the window every few minutes, each glance sending a new spike of fear into my chest. Lucas played on the living room rug, lining up his dinosaur toys, humming softly, unaware that danger waited just outside. I tried to stay calm, to keep breathing the way Dr. Collins had reminded me earlier, but the image of Sophia gripping a steering wheel in the dark, watching my house like a predator stalking its prey. It crawled under my skin and wouldn't leave. Just after sunset, her car door opened. My breath froze. A silhouette stepped out, hesitant, slow, then accelerating with purpose. I grabbed my phone and texted Thomas again. She's moving. He replied instantly. Sheriff on the way. Do not open the door. Lucas looked up from the floor. Grandma? Why are you breathing funny? It's Singler. I forced a smile. Just tired, sweetheart. End quote. But he wasn't convinced. He watched me with those big, thoughtful eyes, the same eyes James had at that age. And for the first time, I realized Lucas sensed danger more deeply than he let on. Then came the sound. A sharp, metallic rattle against the front doorknob. Slow at first, then faster. More desperate. I froze where I stood. Lucas whispered, Is someone here? Even way. Before I could answer, a voice hissed through the door. Low, raw, frantic. Eleanor. Open the door. Sophia. My pulse roared in my ears. Eleanor, I know you're in there. We need to talk. And X's. Her tone was thin, brittle, the edges cracking like glass under pressure. We have nothing to talk about, I said, forcing my voice to be steady. She slammed her palm against the door. Yes, we do. You stole my son. End quote. Lucas flinched, pulling his dinosaur toys close as if using them as a shield. I stepped between him and the door, my back straightening. Lucas is safe. You need to leave. I have. No, don't you dare talk to me like that. End quote. The doorknob twisted violently. Metal scraped against metal. She tried again. My hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. She would not scare this child. Not in his own home. I reached for the deadbolt to make sure it was fully latched, then checked the chain. Locked. Secure. Still, the pounding grew louder. Let me in. Nowsy. Her voice cracked on the last word, splintering into something unhinged. I grabbed Lucas's hand and whispered, Go to your room. Right now. End quote. His eyes widened. Is Mom? 10. Go, I said, gently but firmly. He obeyed, running halfway up the stairs before turning, torn between fear and loyalty. I mouthed, It's okay. He disappeared upstairs. Sophia banged again, then silence. A silence so sudden it made the hairs on my arms rise. I moved to the peephole. Sophia wasn't at the door anymore. She was at the side gate. I ran to the kitchen window. She was fumbling with the latch, pulling, shaking, trying to yank it open. Her movements were erratic, uncoordinated, like she wasn't fully in her body, like her mind was splitting under the weight of everything she was losing. Sophia, stop, I shouted through the glass. "You're violating a court order." "A very time." She froze. Her head snapped toward me, eyes hollow and wild, pupils blown wide. "You did this," she whispered. You took everything." End quote. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding. "Go home, please. I have just $7. "No," she said, voice eerily calm now. "This is my home, my life, my son, Asa." Then she reached into her purse. My breath caught. 100 possibilities flashed through my mind, none of them good. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped my phone. I dialed 911. Before I could press the call button, red and blue lights washed across the walls. The sheriff's car screeched to a stop. Doors flew open. 2 deputies rushed toward Sophia. She spun around, startled, backing away from the gate as if surprised the world didn't bend to her will. "Sophia Jensen," one deputy shouted, "step away from the property. Now. If you didn't know." She lifted her hands, trembling. "He's my son. She stole my son." End quote. "Ma'am," the deputy said, not unkindly but with firm authority, "you are in violation of a court order. Step away from the house." "I have so." Sophia turned toward me, eyes wet, furious, pleading all at once. "Please, Eleanor, please. I just want to see him. Just let me see him. He needs me." End quote. For one split second, a part of me, some soft, human part, felt a pang of sympathy. Because beneath all the venom and manipulation, she was a woman collapsing under the wreckage of her own choices. But then I remembered Lucas trembling on the stairs, the broken toy, the threats, the texts, the Arizona tickets, the crying that wasn't real, the rage that was. "No," I whispered through the glass. "You need help. I see the servant whine." Sophia let out a guttural sound, not a scream, not a sob, something primal and broken. She lunged forward as if sheer willpower could break through metal and reality. The deputies caught her instantly. She kicked. She clawed. She screamed words I will never repeat. One deputy called dispatch. "We have a 5,150 risk indicator. Request mental health support on scene." To one and two-way. The other tried to calm her, but Sophia was gone, lost in a storm only she could see. They finally restrained her. She collapsed onto the ground, sobbing. Her screams dissolved into incoherent rambling. When they lifted her to her feet, she looked up at me, eyes glassy and vacant. "You ruined my life," she whispered. The words pierced deep, but not the way she intended. Because in that moment, I didn't see a monster. I saw a woman in freefall, a woman who had been unraveling thread by thread, unnoticed by everyone except the man who wrote that letter, and the child she frightened without meaning to. As the deputies guided her to the patrol car, Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs behind me. "Grandma?" he whispered, voice trembling. "Is Mom going to jail?" "Yes." I turned away from the flashing lights, gathered him into my arms, and pressed my cheek against his hair. "No, sweetheart," I murmured. "She's going somewhere to get help. Everybody." But she yelled so much. "Because she's hurting," I said softly. "And when people are hurting, they don't always make good choices." And he buried his face in my shoulder. Outside, the patrol car door closed. Sophia's silhouette bowed forward in the back seat. Not angry now, not threatening, just broken. As they pulled away, I felt something heavy inside me. Lift, not relief, not victory, but a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the fallout. The house felt unnaturally quiet after the patrol car pulled away, as if the walls themselves were stunned into stillness. Lucas clung to me long after the flashing lights disappeared down the road, his small body trembling every few seconds with aftershocks he didn't understand. I held him on the couch, stroking his hair, whispering soft reassurances until his breathing finally steadied. But even when he relaxed against me, his hand never let go of my shirt, like part of him feared that if he loosened his grip, someone else might try to take him away. When I finally tucked him into bed, he asked the question I had dreaded all night. "Grandma, did Mom want to take me because I was bad?" I felt my heart fracture. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "You are the brightest, kindest part of this whole family. None of this is your fault." "It's sentence," he nodded slowly. but his eyes were clouded with something far too old for an 8-year-old boy, something that looked like understanding mixed with fear. "Will Mom come back?" he whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "But not until she's better." Into eyes. He curled onto his side, hugging his stuffed dinosaur, and eventually drifted into sleep. "Downstairs," I called Thomas. He answered on the first ring. "How's Lucas?" "Reven. Shaken," I admitted. "How's Sophia?" "And a scrim." He hesitated. "They took her for psychiatric evaluation. 72-hour hold. Televal." I closed my eyes. "Will that help her?" "Own. It's the first step," he said gently. "But she'll fight it. People like her always fight anything that forces them to see themselves." ADO. I sat at the kitchen table long after we ended the call, the glow of the overhead light casting long shadows across the room. I should have felt safer. I should have felt relieved, but instead, a lingering dread crept through me, the kind that comes not from what has happened, but from what comes next. The next morning, Child Services contacted me to schedule a home assessment routine, given the escalation. Later, the court issued a temporary modification order granting me interim custody, with supervised visitation for Sophia only after she was released and cleared. For the first time since James died, there was a structure around Lucas's safety. A legal wall, a barrier Sophia couldn't break with charm, tears, or threats. But even with those protections, the aftermath was messy. Neighbors whispered. Parents from Lucas's school sent cautious texts. People who had smiled at us last month now stepped gently around the subject, unsure what to say, unsure what to believe. Rumors grew in places where truth struggled to breathe. 3 days after the break-in, I took Lucas to see his therapist for the first time. The waiting room smelled of peppermint tea and books. Lucas sat cross-legged in a beanbag chair, twisting the sleeve of his shirt while Dr. Patel knelt beside him. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked gently. Lucas nodded. "Mom yelled a lot." I. "Do you want to talk about that?" "I fall with booted," he shrugged. "I don't like when the house gets loud. I was not of this. And when it gets quiet? Experience." He hesitated. "That's worse, sometimes." I looked away, swallowing the ache in my chest. After their session, Dr. Patel asked to speak with me privately. Her office walls were covered in children's drawings, dinosaurs, rainbows, stick figure families holding hands. A painful contrast to why we were there. "Lucas is resilient," she began, "but he's carrying more fear than he shows. His symptoms line up with chronic anxiety triggered by emotional unpredictability. Is really wild to woe." My throat tightened. "What can I do?" "1. Consistency," she said. "Routines, predictable responses, a calm environment. He feels safe with you. That's significant." "It is highly." I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. "He's also afraid you'll leave," she added quietly. My heart broke again, not cleanly, but like glass crushed under a heel. "I won't," I whispered. "I won't. Ever you." When we drove home, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat, his face finally peaceful. For the first time in days, the world outside looked normal. Light hitting the pavement, kids playing in front yards, neighbors walking dogs, ordinary life moving forward as if ours hadn't just cracked open. But when we pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my breath falter. A black SUV parked across the street, tinted windows, no vehicles. Engine running, no one getting out. At first I thought maybe it was unmarked police keeping an eye on the house, given the recent events. But the SUV didn't leave when we walked inside. It didn't even shift its position. It just sat there, watching. I checked the blinds several times that afternoon. The SUV stayed, engine still running. Later that evening, while I reheated dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think she was the only one watching? Is difference?" I froze. Another message followed. "Some of us know the truth. Some of us know what you did." It's Brezian. My skin crawled. What I did? What truth? A third message came through. Sophia wasn't alone in this. It's not a fiver, Taman. My hand shook as I set the phone down. Sophia was in a psychiatric hold. She couldn't text me. She couldn't send anyone. So who was this? I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. The SUV was still there, headlights off, engine humming softly, driver invisible through the dark tint. A cold realization rippled through me. Sophia wasn't the only threat. She might not even be the biggest one. And whatever was happening next was coming from someone else entirely. Someone who didn't want Sophia to fall alone. Someone who needed her to stay quiet. Someone who had something to lose if the whole truth came out. Someone who had just found me. The black SUV stayed on my street long after the sun dipped below the roofs of neighboring houses, its dark windows reflecting nothing but the faintest traces of porch lights. I kept checking the blinds every few minutes, unable to shake the feeling that someone inside that vehicle wasn't just watching, they were studying me, waiting, measuring. Lucas colored quietly at the kitchen table, each crayon stroke slow, careful, as if even he sensed the air thickening around us. The tension didn't come from Sophia anymore. This was something else, something colder, something calculated. When I finally stepped away from the window long enough to put Lucas to bed, he asked a question that nearly stopped my heart. "Grandma, are we hiding?" I haven't grazed. I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, smoothing his blanket. "We're just being careful." "Re-day's sign." He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on me, searching for reassurance I wasn't sure I could give. "Will you stay in my room tonight?" I was beat. "I'll stay right outside your door." "Way." His shoulders relaxed only slightly. "Okay. If you two in Vendo." When he finally drifted off, I went downstairs and turned off the lights except for the lamp near the front window. I wanted whoever was out there to think I was still awake. I wanted them to know I saw them. Sometimes fear shrinks you, but tonight, it made me sharper. Moments later, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You should have left things alone. To haven't point." A second message followed immediately. "He never trusted you." "I know." I stiffened. "Who?" I wrote back without thinking. No reply. 10 minutes passed. Then the SUV's headlights flicked on, not fully, just enough to illuminate the neighborhood with an eerie glow. My pulse hammered as the driver's door opened. A tall figure stepped out. Even from across the street, I recognized the posture, rigid, confident, entitled. A posture I had seen once before, at the funeral. The man in the gray suit. The one whispering to Sophia. The one she met in hotels in Miami. The one who appeared in every photograph from the anonymous file. Richard Hale. The man James had suspected. The man in the texts. The man who had more to lose than Sophia ever did. He adjusted his coat, looked directly at my house, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us, the hunter and the hunted switching roles without warning. Then he crossed the street, slowly, casually, as if he were walking toward a friend's house, not the home of a woman he'd just threatened from a hidden number. Every instinct in me screamed to lock the doors, call the police, hide. Instead, I stepped into the foyer and stood behind the door, listening, waiting. 3 soft knocks. Not violent like Sophia's, not desperate, worse, calm, controlled. I didn't open the door. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, voice smooth, rehearsed. "I know you're there. I just want to talk." Quote, I stayed silent. He chuckled lightly. "You don't need to be afraid. I'm not Sophia." End quote. The way he said her name, dismissive, irritated, made my skin crawl. "She's unstable," he added with a sigh, as if stating an inconvenience rather than a crisis. "But you already know that." I won. Still, I said nothing. Then his tone shifted sharper, colder. "We both know she can't hold up under this kind of pressure. She'll fall apart. And when she does, she might say things she shouldn't." End quote. A chill ran through me. "What do you want?" I finally asked through the door. He exhaled, a smile woven into the sound. "See? That's better. We're having a conversation." Wes. I imagined him leaning casually against the railing, every inch the charming predator. "I want cooperation," he said. "Nothing more, nothing less." I was braced. I clenched my jaw. "Meaning?" "I have meaning," he said slowly. "This entire situation can still be fixed, but only if you stop pushing, stop digging, stop provoking Sophia. Is not a dude." I felt anger rise in me, hot and sharp. "You mean stop protecting my grandson?" "Eight." "Oh, please," he scoffed. "Let's not pretend you're a saint in this. You're making things worse." My hands curled into fists. He continued, "You're destabilizing her. She's emotional, volatile. She might slip, confess to things that never should come to light." "It's not ever way." My breath caught. Confess what? Adiard. A pause. Then, softly. You know. I know. I didn't. Not entirely. But the way he said it made my heart pound in my ears. The truth was deeper than I realized. Darker than Sophia alone. And maybe James had known more than even he had written in that letter. When I didn't answer, Richard let out another sigh, as if I were inconveniencing him. Look, he said, I'm offering you a chance to stop this escalation, sign a few documents, custody agreements, maybe the house transfer, and we walk away clean. Sophia doesn't crack, I don't get dragged into court. And Lucas stays safe, end quote. That last word twisted in my stomach like a knife. You're threatening a child, I said, voice shaking but steady. I'm protecting myself, he corrected. Then came the quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the universe leaning in. Finally, he said it. You should be smart, Mrs. Reynolds. James wasn't. If you can tour. My breath left me in a silent gasp. James, my son, the man who had sensed danger, who wrote warnings, who changed his will, who documented everything, who died suddenly. Too suddenly. Get off my property, I whispered. Richard chuckled again. I thought you might say that. But don't worry. You'll come around. People always do when the alternative is unpleasant. Don't. He stepped back from the door. I peeked through the peephole. His smile wasn't angry. It wasn't panicked. It was confident, as though he had already calculated his next move. Then he walked back to the SUV, got in, and drove away without looking back. My whole body trembled as I locked every door, every window, every deadbolt in the house. When I finally collapsed onto the couch, the reality sank in like ice. Sophia wasn't the architect of this chaos. She was the pawn, the visible storm, the chaotic distraction. But Richard, he was the quiet threat, the one who planned, the one who hid behind shadows, the one who had everything to gain and everything to lose. And now he knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't backing down, which meant he wouldn't either. This war had just entered a new stage, one with deeper secrets, higher stakes, and a far more dangerous enemy than I ever imagined. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind outside the window, every flicker of headlights from passing cars sent my nerves sparking like exposed wires. Lucas slept soundly in the next room, but I paced the hallway like a guard on rotation, checking each lock twice, then 3 times. It wasn't Sophia I feared anymore. It was the man who had stood on my porch with smug confidence, threat hidden beneath charm, danger wrapped in politeness. Richard Hale, a name I had barely known a month ago, now living rent-free in every corner of my mind. By morning, the fear hardened into something sharper, determination. I made a pot of coffee I barely touched, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I typed his name slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. The screen filled with links, corporate conferences, real estate partnerships, philanthropy galas, a polished public image built on a foundation of curated success. But beneath the glossy headlines was something else. Lawsuits, whispered accusations, business disputes swept under the rug by settlements that never reached the news. Then I found something that made my breath hitch. A small article from 2 years ago. A man, an associate of Richard's, killed in a tragic accident. Car crash, single vehicle, no witnesses, no investigation. The language was disturbingly familiar. My fingers trembled as I pressed deeper, pulling threads from every corner of the internet. The more I found, the more I understood something terrible. Richard didn't clean up messes. He erased them, quietly, efficiently, without consequences. A cold wave washed through me as one thought surfaced, horrifying, unbearable. What if James's death wasn't an accident? I pushed the thought aside at first. James had collapsed in the driveway. A heart attack, they'd said. No signs of struggle, no suspicion of foul play. But then I remembered something from the funeral, something I had ignored until now. Sophia hadn't cried. Not really. Not the way a wife cries for a husband. She had cried the way a person cries when a plan finally falls into place. And Richard? He had walked behind her. Too close, too familiar. My hands shook as I scrolled back to the anonymous file we'd received weeks earlier. The photos, the texts, the receipts. Suddenly, a detail jumped out at me. A message from Sophia to Richard, dated 3 months ago. Stop pushing him. He's getting suspicious, too. My heart pounded. Suspicious of what? Suspicious of who? I dug deeper through James's email archive, using his old passwords, the ones he'd used since high school, patterns I knew by heart. I found a folder buried beneath layers of subfolders titled Household Records. Inside was a zip file labeled simply J.R. Private. My hands trembled as I clicked. A password prompt appeared. I closed my eyes and whispered, "James, please, I have to ziz." Then I typed the name of his favorite childhood dog. It opened. Inside were documents, screenshots, recordings, typed notes, pages and pages of timestamps, conversations he'd overheard between Sophia and someone else, financial transfers to a shell company managed by a R. Hale, emails between the two of them discussing moving things forward, plans to separate once everything is secured. Worse, so much worse, were the notes James had written late at night, his handwriting jagged with stress. He pressured me again today. He wants access to Lucas's trust. S says I need to sign the partnership papers. End quote. They won't stop pushing. I have noted. If anything happens to me, it won't be natural. I dropped the mouse. My breath hitched. My vision blurred. James hadn't just been suspicious. He had been terrified. And no one had listened. Not his friends. Not his colleagues. Not even me. My phone buzzed suddenly, jolting me upright. It was Thomas. "Eleanor," he said, breathless. "We need to talk. Right now. Something's happening." My chest tightened. "What?" "Tenger." The psychiatric team released a statement. "Sophia had a visitor yesterday." End quote. My stomach dropped. "Who?" 87. He hesitated, then said the name I already knew was coming. "Richard Hale." He bloated. The room tilted. "They let him in?" "If you way." He signed in as family. And the staff didn't know to stop him. End quote. "What did he say to her?" End quote. Thomas exhaled shakily. "We don't know. But after he left, Sophia had a major emotional break. They had to sedate her." "Television." I pressed a hand to my mouth. "He's trying to silence her." No. "Yes," Thomas said quietly. "And he's not going to stop there." I looked upstairs, at Lucas's backpack, at his drawings taped to the fridge, at the front door I had triple locked last night. "Thomas, I found something," I whispered. His voice sharpened. "What kind of something?" "Allo do a time. Evidence. A lot of it." James kept records, notes, emails, screenshots. He suspected Richard. He feared him. He wrote, I swallowed hard. He wrote that if something happened to him, it wouldn't be natural. "It's rected." End quote. Silence. Then, "Eleanor, do not send anything electronically. Print it. Bring it to my office. Today." 80. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "What about the SUV? Is Revelonger?" "It's gone," he said, but his voice carried no relief. If anything, he sounded more worried. I printed every document, every screenshot, every note. Each page sliding out of the printer tightened the knot in my stomach. When the last sheet hit the tray, I stacked them neatly, ready to go. Then everything happened at once. A car door slammed outside. Footsteps pounded up the walkway. The doorbell rang once, twice, 3 times. I froze. "Grandma?" Lucas called from upstairs. "Is someone here?" "If not are." I forced my voice to stay calm. "Stay in your room, sweetheart." End quote. I moved to the window, heart in my throat. Not Richard, not the sheriff. It was someone I didn't expect, someone who looked terrified. Sophia's sister Melissa, tear-streaked, disheveled, shaking. I opened the door just an inch. She stepped forward urgently, eyes wild with fear. "Eleanor," she whispered, voice trembling. "You need to come with me. Now." End quote. "Why?" I said no. She looked over her shoulder, then leaned in. "It's about James, and what really happened the night he died." End quote. Melissa stood on my porch, shaking so badly I thought her legs might give out. Even in the dim light filtering through the entryway, I could see the panic etched across her face, raw, frantic, desperate. She was nothing like Sophia. Melissa had always been the quieter sister, the one who apologized too much, who stood slightly behind in family photos, who tried to keep peace where peace didn't belong. But tonight she looked like someone carrying a truth too heavy to bear alone. "Eleanor," she whispered again, glancing over her shoulder. Please, just come with me. I can't say it here, every Tuesday. Fear crawled slowly up my spine. Why? What happened? End quote. She pressed, shaking hands together. It's not safe here. I was on. Every instinct screamed to stay inside, to lock the door, to shield Lucas from whatever storm was about to break. But then Melissa said something that made my breath stop mid-air. It's about James, and what he told Sophia the night before he died. Is adjusted. My blood turned cold. I stepped outside, but only far enough to close the door gently behind me. You need to tell me now. Right here. Right this second. 84. Melissa swallowed hard. I don't know how to say it without... Say it, I insisted, voice low, steady. Whatever it is, I can handle it. Is goodbye. Tears filled her eyes. She gripped the railing as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. James called Sophia the night before he died, she said. He left a message. I didn't hear it until today. She deleted it, but I work at a phone store. I know how to retrieve things she thought were gone. My breath caught. What did he say? She covered her mouth, tears slipping between her fingers. He told her he was leaving her. I know, the world tilted. Leaving? I whispered. Melissa nodded, sobbing silently. He said he was done, that he had evidence of everything, that he was meeting with the attorney in the morning to separate finances, that he was going to file for custody of Lucas. He said he knew about Richard. I do though. My knees almost buckled. James knew. He hadn't been suspicious. He had been certain. And Sophia, Melissa whispered, voice cracking. She didn't take it well. She called Richard. I heard the message. She said, he knows. Come over now. I embers. The porch seemed to sway beneath me. I gripped the door frame to steady myself. Melissa, I murmured, unable to breathe. Are you saying that Richard was at the house the night James? Yes. It's not as braid. The word fell between us like a stone plunging into deep water. Melissa wiped her nose with her sleeve. I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what it meant. Sophia was hysterical, screaming that James was ruining everything. She begged Richard to take care of it. Those were her exact words. I weighed. Tears blurred my vision. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. She told Richard to take care of it? End quote. Yes, Melissa whispered. And he said he would. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The night air felt colder, the world quieter. Lucas's soft hum upstairs drifted faintly through the window, and that sound grounded me, kept me upright when everything else spun. What happened next? I asked, voice barely audible. Melissa wrapped her arms around herself, as though trying to keep from falling apart. She told me not to come over, but I disobeyed. I drove to their house. I parked down the street. I saw Richard's car in the driveway. I saw the light on in the kitchen. I saw shadows, heard shouting. Then it stopped. Fires. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And then, I saw Richard leave. End quote. She shook violently. James was alive when I left. I didn't know God, Eleanor. I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't want to get involved. Sophia was my sister. I didn't think. She gasped, her breath hitching. The next morning she called me, screaming that James had collapsed, that he was dead. She said to say nothing, that it was better this way. She made me swear. I was terrified. I didn't understand. My heart pounded in my ears. The world felt suddenly too sharp, too real. And today? I pressed gently. Why now? Why come to me? 82. Melissa wiped her eyes, looking utterly broken. Because Richard came to my house yesterday, she whispered. He said if I breathed a word to anyone, he'd destroy my life. He's not like Sophia, Eleanor. He's worse, much worse. She spirals. He plans. I have no videos. A chill ripped through me. She grabbed my arm suddenly. Her voice was urgent, trembling with a fear that came from deep inside. You're not safe. Lucas isn't safe. Richard is desperate. Sophia is falling apart, and he blames you. He said everything was fine until you interfered. If you have to prize, her fingers tightened. He said you're next. Is 9. I felt the blood drain from my face. Melissa, I whispered. You need to come inside. Now. You need protection. Mashin, She shook her head violently. No. If he sees me here, he'll know I told you. I just came to warn you. I would dine. You can't go back home. 12:12:2. I have to, she cried. My mother is there. She has no idea what's going on. I have done. I grabbed her shoulders. Please let me call the police. Let me get you help. I will. She stepped back, tears pouring down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I'm so sorry for what my sister did, for what I let happen, for not saying something sooner. It's scribed to end quote. Then she looked over her shoulder, eyes wide with terror. A car engine revved at the end of the street. A familiar one. Go inside, she whispered. Lock your doors. It's not a movie. Melissa, go! It's not doggers and oundress. She fled down the driveway. I ran inside and slammed the door, locked it, bolted it, secured every latch until my hands trembled. Through the living room window, headlights flashed across the pavement. Not the sheriff, not a neighbor. Richard's SUV. He slowed in front of my house, stopped. Then, in a chilling echo of the night James died, he turned off his engine and waited. Richard's SUV idled in the darkness like a predator crouched in tall grass, silent, patient, certain of its advantage. The street lamp flickered over the windshield, catching only the faint outline of his face expressionless. Still, too calm for a man who had just chased his girlfriend's sister down the block. My chest tightened. Lucas's bedroom light glowed softly upstairs, a small square of warmth in a night turning dangerous. I placed my hand on the stair railing, steadying myself against a wave of fear so sharp it almost bent me in half. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Deputy on the way. Stay inside. I have. Melissa had heard me dialing 911, her scream still echoing in my mind. She'd run off, terrified, but her courage had bought me precious seconds. My hands shook as I moved through the house, checking every lock a second time. Curtains drawn, security system armed. A mother's instinct on high alert not for my child, but for my child's child. For James's legacy, for the boy sleeping above me, unaware of the shadow crouched outside our home. I thought Richard might come to the door, pound on it, shout, break a window, force a confrontation. But he didn't. He simply waited, headlights burning, engine humming, like a warning. Minutes stretched like wet rope, thin, fragile, ready to snap. Then flashes of red and blue fractured the quiet. A sheriff's cruiser turned onto our street, slow and deliberate, like a shepherd stepping between wolf and lamb. Richard's SUV pulled away instantly, too quickly, peeling down the street as though he'd been waiting for exactly that moment to vanish. Of course he ran. Cowards always do. The deputy searched the area, took my statement, and assured me a full report would be forwarded to the lead detective assigned to Sophia's case. Because yes, by then, it was officially Sophia's case. Melissa's recovered voicemail from James had already been sent to law enforcement, along with the phone logs, the camera footage from my home, the night shift nurse's testimony, the security guard at the hospital, who remembered Sophia arriving with someone else that night, someone tall, dressed in black, matching Richard's build. Once the sheriff left, silence returned, a heavy, aching silence that settled into the walls. Upstairs, Lucas slept peacefully. I leaned against James's study doorway, weak with relief and grief and something else, something almost like vindication. Not satisfaction, never that, but a painful, righteous confirmation that my instincts had never been wrong. My son had seen a truth no one wanted to confront, and he died fighting to protect the only thing that mattered to him, his child. I sank into his old chair and let myself cry for James, for Lucas, for Melissa, whose fate I did not yet know, and even, in some strange, twisted way, for Sophia, who had chosen a path so dark she could no longer see where it would lead. 3 weeks later, everything came crashing down publicly. Not because of me, not because of Melissa, but because of Richard. A raid on one of his development properties, massive financial fraud, offshore laundering, witness tampering, news vans parked outside the courthouse as he was led out in handcuffs. Sophia emerged days later, pale, frantic, shouting at reporters that she had no idea what Richard had been doing. But journalists wield truth like a blade. And soon the recovered voicemail from James leaked Sophia's furious message to Richard, her deleted phone history, her sudden attempt to flee the country, her absence from Lucas's life, Public sympathy evaporated. Lawyers withdrew. Friends stopped answering her calls. Her carefully crafted facade cracked. Within a month, she negotiated a plea deal for withholding evidence and obstruction. Not prison, but probation, restrictions, supervision, counseling, and distance. The last time Sophia saw Lucas, it was in a supervised visitation room with neutral walls and plastic chairs. She cried. He looked at the floor. She said she was sorry. He stayed silent. When her time was up, she stood and whispered, "I'll do better." He nodded, polite and distant, the way children do when they've learned not to expect more than a promise. She left the country the following year. I only heard of her again when a payment notification came through the support portal. Nothing more personal than numbers and a timestamp. I never told Lucas the details unless he asked, and even then, I protected what little remained of his childhood. And Lucas, oh, Lucas, the boy who once trembled in hospital hallways and hid fear beneath quiet smiles, grew into someone remarkable. He slept through the night again. He laughed freely. He joined the school play, the robotics club, and a youth choir. He kept a picture of James on his bookshelf and kissed it goodnight before bed. He talked about him openly, without shame, without fear of losing the memory. Last week he said, "I think Dad would be proud of us, Grandma." I nearly broke at that. Our home, his home, filled with noise again. Clattering dishes, soccer cleats, homework sheets scattered across the table. Life returning, stitch by stitch. The memorial garden in the backyard bloomed twice that year. 3 roses, every time a strange, beautiful coincidence. 2 white, 1 red. Dad's colors, Lucas said, smiling. Maybe so. And me? I found my purpose again. Not in fighting, not in gathering evidence, not in surviving danger, but in raising a boy with tenderness, truth, and stability. In honoring the son I lost by loving the son he left behind. I donated James's old suits, retired his office blazer, framed the last letter he wrote me and hung it where morning light touches it first. Some nights I sit alone on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance above the grass. The same swing where Lucas once asked if his mother was ever coming back. Now he doesn't ask anymore. Now he knows that some people leave not because children aren't lovable, but because some adults never learned how to love properly in the first place. And he knows something else, too. Family isn't defined by who leaves. It's defined by who stays, by who shows up, who protects, who chooses you every day, without fail. That's the story James left behind, and the one Lucas now lives. If you've listened this far, thank you. And I'll leave you with this. Tell me what part of this story hit you the hardest. And do you believe a parent's love can protect a child even from beyond the grave? I read every comment, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Silent Her, where every story whispers a truth someone needed to hear.